godmother of cocaine. She is Griselda Blanco, was a 69-year-old mother of four, seen here in one of her many mugshots. As of yesterday, she is dead.
September 3rd, 2012, Medellin, Colombia, just outside a quiet butcher shop. The woman who once ruled Miami's cocaine trade stepped into the street. She never saw the motorcycle coming. With 2 shots to the head, Griselda Blanco, the notorious cocaine godmother, met her violent end. The method of her assassination? A motorcycle hitman, ironically, a technique she herself had perfected decades earlier. Griselda Blanco was no ordinary drug lord. Born in the slums of Medellin, she clawed her way from pickpocket to become one of the most feared figures in the history of organized crime. By the late 1970s, she'd built a cocaine empire that moved 3,500 pounds of cocaine every year into the United States, raking in $80 million a month. Her power and wealth were staggering, but her capacity for violence was even more terrifying. Blanco didn't just run a criminal organization, she created an atmosphere of terror across Miami and beyond. She's believed to have ordered over 200 murders, though investigators conservatively documented at least 40. Her brutality knew no limits. In 1982, she ordered a hit that accidentally killed a 2-year-old boy, Johnny Castro. Her reaction? She said she was glad that they were even, according to her own hitman-turned-witness, Jorge Ayala. But Blanco's reign wasn't just about violence. She revolutionized drug smuggling with ingenious methods, like custom lingerie with secret compartments for cocaine. She even set up a Medellin clothing shop to manufacture these specialized garments for her mules. Her network employed over 1,500 traffickers and hitmen, including 3 of her own sons, 2 of whom would later be assassinated in Colombia. Her personal life was just as deadly. Blanco became a widow 3 times, with each husband meeting a violent end. In one infamous incident, she confronted her husband, Alberto Bravo, over missing cartel profits. The showdown ended with Bravo and 6 bodyguards dead in a Bogotá parking lot, while Blanco walked away with a minor stomach wound. By the 1980s, Miami had become a war zone. Blanco's arrival turned the city into a killing ground, as law enforcement described it. Public shootouts, like the infamous Dadeland Mall attack, shocked even veteran detectives. The death toll mounted as rival dealers fell to her ruthlessness. Miami police conservatively estimated she was responsible for about 40 homicides, but the true number is likely much higher. Despite her brutality, Blanco had a twisted sense of business. She maintained strict discipline, paid her enforcers well, and demanded loyalty at any cost. Her network dominated the cocaine trade from Miami to New York, setting the stage for the rise of the major Colombian cartels. Pablo Escobar himself acknowledged her influence. She helped him break into the U.S. market. But all empires fall. In 1985, Blanco was finally arrested in California. She served 13 years in federal prison for drug trafficking, then faced murder charges in Florida. By 2004, Blanco was deported to Colombia after serving nearly 2 decades behind bars. Supposedly retired, she lived quietly in Medellin, claiming she planned to live off her property sales. But old enemies never forget. On that September day in 2012, as she left the butcher shop, her past caught up with her. What makes Blanco's assassination so chilling is the method: the motorcycle hitman. She had pioneered this technique in the 1970s and 80s, using it to eliminate countless rivals. Her end was poetic justice, a victim of her own creation. Law enforcement officials who pursued Blanco for years had mixed reactions. Some felt satisfaction in the karmic justice, others reflected on the sheer scale of her violence. A retired Miami detective, Nelson Andreos, said,
"It's surprising to all of us that she had not been killed sooner because she made a lot of enemies."
Blanco's death marked the end of an era. She wasn't just the first female drug lord. She was one of the most ruthless and innovative criminals in history. If you were shocked at Blanco's end, then you need to see what happened to Nazario Moreno. His death would spark a wave of vigilante justice that changed Mexico forever. March 9th, 2014. Mexican Marines stop a black SUV in Tumbiscatillo, Michoacan. Inside sits Nazario Moreno Gonzalez, better known as El Mas Loco, the craziest one. Ordered to surrender, Moreno draws his pistol and fires. The Marines respond with overwhelming force, ending the life of one of Mexico's most infamous and enigmatic drug lords. Nazario Moreno wasn't your typical cartel boss. Born in Apatzingán, Michoacán, he rose to power as the spiritual leader of La Familia Michoacana, a criminal organization that blended brutal violence with twisted religious doctrine. Moreno's cartel became notorious not just for drug trafficking, but for its bizarre code of conduct and pseudo-religious teachings. He presented himself as a righteous protector of the people, writing a book called Pensamientos filled with moral guidelines for his followers. But underneath this facade of piety was a ruthless killer who ordered mass executions and terror campaigns against anyone who opposed him. Moreno's approach to organized crime was unique. He mixed Bible verses with self-help slogans, creating a cult-like atmosphere among his followers. La Familia Michoacana's members believed they were fighting a holy war against evil, even as they trafficked methamphetamine and extorted entire communities. This religious veneer attracted devoted followers and helped justify the cartel's brutal actions. Moreno's sermons and writings circulated widely, giving his criminal enterprise a sense of purpose and mission beyond mere profit. But this spiritual gangster's empire was built on fear and violence. La Familia's reign of terror included public executions, mass killings, and strict enforcement of their twisted code. They controlled vast territories in Michoacán through a combination of charity, intimidation, and outright terror. La Familia Michoacana announced its arrival spectacularly. In September 2006, cartel gunmen rolled 5 heads onto a disco dance floor in Uruapan, leaving behind a message claiming the act as divine justice. This brutal display set the tone for Moreno's reign, a bizarre mix of religious rhetoric and extreme violence. Under Moreno's leadership, La Familia expanded rapidly. They controlled meth production and distribution across western Mexico, building a vast criminal network that stretched into the United States. But their power came at a terrible cost. Entire communities lived in fear, paying taxes to the cartel, and watching their young men conscripted into criminal service. In December 2010, the Mexican government announced Moreno's death after a massive shootout in Michoacán. But there was a problem. No body was found. Over the next 3 years, sightings of Moreno continued. Vigilante groups reported seeing him at cockfights and parties. His presence loomed over Michoacán like a ghost, fueling the legend of the immortal drug lord. During this period, La Familia fractured. The Knights Templar cartel emerged from the chaos, adopting even more bizarre rituals and medieval symbolism. But Moreno remained the hidden power behind the throne, guiding the organization from the shadows. Moreno's reign of terror eventually sparked a grassroots rebellion. Fed up with extortion and violence, ordinary citizens formed self-defense groups, known as vigilantes or autodefensas. These groups began fighting back, driving the Knights Templar from their strongholds and exposing the government's impotence in protecting its people. The vigilante movement gained momentum, forcing the government to intervene. But many suspected that officials were more concerned with controlling the uprising than actually dismantling the cartel. The line between criminal and law enforcement blurred as vigilante groups collaborated with federal forces. By 2014, the Mexican government had finally confirmed what many already knew. Nazario Moreno was still alive. On his 44th birthday, March 8th, authorities launched a coordinated operation to capture him. The next morning, Marines intercepted Moreno's vehicle in Tumbiscatillo. When ordered to surrender, he drew his pistol and fired. The Marines responded with overwhelming force, killing him instantly. This time, there was no doubt. Moreno's fingerprints confirmed his identity. The body was displayed publicly, ending years of speculation and myth-making. Moreno's death marked the beginning of the end for the Knights Templar. The cartel fractured, and Michoacán began to reclaim its freedom. But he was not the only drug lord to go out with gunfire and flying bullets.
This amateur video, shot just over the border from Brownsville, Texas, captured a long gun battle between Mexican Marines and gunmen protecting one of Mexico's most wanted drug lords, Antonio Cardenas Guillen.
November 5th, 2010. The quiet city of Matamoros exploded in violence. Automatic gunfire echoed across the border from Brownsville, Texas. This was no ordinary shootout. It was the beginning of the end for one of Mexico's most powerful drug lords. Antonio Ezequiel Cardenas Guillen, better known as Tony Tormenta or Tony the Storm, was the co-leader of the Gulf Cartel. At 48 years old, he had ruled the cartel's massive cocaine and marijuana operations for years, alongside Jorge Eduardo Costilla Sanchez. His network stretched deep into the United States, moving untold tons of drugs north, while leaving a trail of violence in its wake. Tony Tormenta's rise was built on bloodshed. As the brother of imprisoned cartel boss Osiel Cardenas Guillen, he inherited a criminal empire when his sibling was extradited to the United States in 2007. Under Tony's leadership, the Gulf Cartel maintained its dominance, until they made a fateful mistake. The trouble began when the Gulf Cartel's relationship with the Zetas collapsed. What started as a business partnership turned into an open war. Tony Tormenta's decision to break from the Zetas sparked a brutal conflict across northeastern Mexico, turning once quiet border towns into battlegrounds. The morning of November 5th started like any other, but by 11 a.m., gunfire erupted in an upscale Matamoros neighborhood. What began as a targeted operation quickly escalated into all-out urban warfare. Military armored vehicles rolled through the streets as cartel gunmen fought to protect their boss. Civilian cars became barricades. Masked men with assault rifles took up defensive positions, determined to hold back the advancing Marines.
But some worry that it will further empower a rival drug cartel in the area, the Zetas, which also has been one of Mexico's most brutal and feared drug gangs.
The battle raged for 8 hours. Bullets tore through homes and vehicles. Residents cowered inside as the city became a war zone. By the time the smoke cleared, Matamoros was changed forever. Tony Tormenta's body lay among the wreckage. 4 of his gunmen were dead beside him. But the cost was high. 2 Marines, a soldier, and a local journalist also lost their lives in the crossfire. The journalist's bullet-riddled Prensa vest told the story of how dangerous reporting on the cartels had become. The aftermath was immediate. Military vehicles patrolled the streets. Bullet holes scarred buildings and cars. The city was faced with violence that had erupted so suddenly.
More than 28,000 Mexicans have been killed in drug-related violence since Mexico's president launched a major assault on organized crime 4 years ago.
Tony Tormenta's death was a major victory for the Mexican government. President Felipe Calderón's war on drug cartels had claimed one of its biggest targets. U.S. authorities had offered a $5 million reward for his capture. Mexican authorities put $2 million on his head. Both countries wanted him off the streets. But the victory came at a cost. The power vacuum left by Tony Tormenta's death destabilized the region. The Zetas saw an opportunity and moved to expand their territory, unleashing even more violence. The Gulf Cartel fractured, leading to bloody internal conflicts that still echo across Tamaulipas today. Tony Tormenta's fall marked the beginning of a new, more chaotic era in the Mexican drug war. But if you thought Tony Tormenta's story was intense, wait until you see what happened to the leader of the ruthless Los Zetas cartel, Heriberto Lacano himself.
Se lo comentaba justamente hace unos minutos, autoridades mexicanas están ya confirmando la muerte del líder del cártel de los Zetas, uno de los más sanguinarios en México.
He was the founder and leader of the powerful Zetas drug cartel, considered to be one of the 2 most powerful drug gangs in the country.
October 9th, 2012. Mexican Marines converge on a small town in Coahuila, just 80 miles from the Texas border. Their target is Heriberto Lascano, better known as El Lasca, the ruthless leader of Los Zetas. The confrontation ends dramatically, leaving Lascano's body as proof of his demise. Heriberto Lascano's story is one of transformation from elite soldier to notorious cartel leader. Born in 1974, he began his career as a member of Mexico's Special Forces, trained in advanced military tactics and counterinsurgency. These skills would later become the foundation of Los Zetas' terrifying reputation. Lascano first made his mark as an enforcer for the Gulf Cartel, using his military background to professionalize organized crime in Mexico. But his ambitions quickly outgrew his role, leading to the formation of Los Zetas, a cartel that would redefine violence and intimidation in the drug trade. Lascano made Los Zetas synonymous with extreme violence and militarized tactics. The organization recruited former soldiers, trained new members with military discipline, and introduced a level of organization previously unseen in Mexican cartels. The Zetas' operations extended far beyond drug trafficking. They diversified into kidnapping, extortion, human trafficking, and arms dealing. Their brutal methods included public mass killings, and terror campaigns designed to instill fear in both rivals and civilians. Lascano's military background was evident in every aspect of Los Zetas' operations. The cartel established regional cells specializing in specific crimes, creating a decentralized but highly effective network. They were also among the first to use advanced weaponry and military-grade equipment in their criminal activities. Lascano earned the nickname El Verdugo, the executioner, for his personal involvement in hundreds of killings. His leadership style was ruthless and uncompromising, demanding absolute loyalty and punishing betrayal with death. Under his command, Los Zetas became infamous for their innovative and terrifying tactics. They were the first cartel to display heads of rivals as warnings, turning violence into a gruesome form of communication. Their reign of terror included some of Mexico's most shocking massacres and prison breaks. But Lascano's approach also made him many enemies, both within and outside the organization. His increasing paranoia and strict control began to fracture the cartel structure, setting the stage for internal conflict. By 2012, the once unified Zetas cartel was facing internal strife. Lascano's deputy, Miguel Trevino Morales, known as Z40, was gaining power and challenging his authority. The resulting power struggle led to increased violence and instability within the organization. Meanwhile, Mexican authorities were closing in. The government had placed a $2.3 million bounty on Lascano's head, while the United States offered an additional $5 million. His days as an untouchable kingpin were numbered. On that fateful day in October 2012, the Mexican Navy received intelligence about Lascano's whereabouts in Coahuila. When Marines confronted him, a fierce gun battle erupted. Lascano, true to his reputation, went down fighting.
Mexico's Navy says it's confident it has killed one of the country's top drug lords. Heriberto Lascano, the head of the Zetas cartel.
The aftermath was both shocking and symbolic. Lascano's body, displayed to the world, served as undeniable proof that El Lasca was finally dead. The once invincible leader of Los Zetas had fallen. The death of Lascano sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. Los Zetas, already fractured by internal conflict, now faced a leadership crisis. Trevino Morales seized control, but the organization would never regain its former strength. For law enforcement, Lascano's death was a major victory. It demonstrated the effectiveness of military pressure against organized crime and showed that even the most powerful cartel leaders could be brought down. However, the victory was short-lived. Los Zetas splintered into smaller factions, leading to new waves of violence as rival groups fought for control of drug routes and territories. Despite the clear evidence of Lascano's death, rumors persist about Lascano's fate. Some reports claim his body was stolen from a funeral home by armed men, adding to the mystique surrounding his demise. Others suggest that he faked his death and escaped, a common theme in cartel lore.
The Navy says they carried out preliminary forensic reports. They're not really saying what that means, but there are already local reports here that they no longer have the body, actually.
These rumors show the larger challenge of combating organized crime in Mexico. Even in death, figures like Lascano continue to influence the criminal landscape, their legends living on in the stories told by both allies and enemies. Lascano's death forced Mexican authorities to rethink their approach to cartel violence. While it demonstrated the effectiveness of military tactics against organized crime, It also highlighted the risks of creating power vacuums. The decentralized structure made it harder to dismantle the organization completely, leading to ongoing challenges for law enforcement. If you think the fallen drug lord gave the authorities a hell of a time near his end, wait till you hear about the boss of bosses, who fought until his demise at the hands of federal forces. December 2009. In Cuernavaca, Mexico, a fierce battle erupted that would mark the dramatic end of one of the nation's most feared drug lords. Arturo Beltran, known as the boss of bosses, found himself cornered in a luxury apartment. What followed was a relentless 4-hour shootout between Mexican Marines and his heavily armed cartel gunmen. The Marines moved under cover of darkness, their armored vehicles rolling steadily through the streets, closing in on the target with precision and resolve. The apartment building in Cuernavaca, modern and well-kept, contradicts the violence raging inside. Once inside, the Marines faced fierce resistance. Walls were riddled with bullets, each mark a testament to the intensity of the firefight. The bedroom where Beltran reportedly made his last stand bore the scars of a brutal exchange. Walls peppered with countless bullet holes, a scene frozen in the chaos of violence. Amidst the gunfire, Mexican Marines, masked and heavily armed, advanced cautiously through the apartment, securing each room with steady vigilance. Their presence here was a clear message. Law enforcement had come prepared to dismantle one of the most powerful criminal enterprises in Mexico. When the smoke finally cleared, the evidence of the cartel's firepower was undeniable. Assault rifles, ammunition, and grenades lay scattered, seized by the authorities. Bundles of U.S. currency, stacks of $100 bills bound tightly, were left exposed on the floor, stark reminders of the empire ruled by violence and money. The aftermath revealed more than just weapons and money. The Marines detained several individuals found within the premises, including civilians caught in the crossfire or linked to the cartel's network. One woman, hands behind her back, stood guarded by a Marine, a stark image of the human cost behind the operation. Arturo Beltran's death struck a significant blow to the cartel's grip on the cocaine trade, which experts estimated controlled nearly a third of the U.S.-bound market. Yet the victory came with a somber understanding. The power vacuum left behind would ignite fierce battles among remaining factions, fueling more violence in the weeks to come. On our next entry, Pablo Escobar, one of the most powerful drug lords who ever lived, is one whose story you should definitely hear.
Escobar, who had the blood of hundreds on his hands, died almost defenseless, trying to escape across a rooftop. He'd been shot repeatedly by troops who had surrounded the two-story house.
December 2, 1993, Pablo Escobar, Colombia's most infamous drug lord, made his last desperate move across the rooftops of Medellin. The hunt had been relentless, a single careless call betrayed his location. The man who had long eluded capture was finally cornered. Pablo Escobar was the architect of narco-terrorism, a man who turned cocaine into a global empire and terrorized Colombia with bombings and assassinations. But that day, the search block, a specialized police unit formed to take him down, closed in, backed by U.S. intelligence and DEA agents who had chased him for years. Escobar's final moments were chaotic and violent. He slipped out a back window and fled across the orange-tiled roofs, breaths shallow, bullets tearing through the air. The gunfire was relentless. His bodyguard fell first. Then Escobar went down, shot through the right ear, the bullet that ended the reign of the Medellin cartel. His death was hailed by the Colombian government as a major victory in the war on drugs. But as the dust settled, it became clear that the cocaine trade would not end with Escobar. Rival cartels were ready to fill the void, and the cycle of violence was far from over.
This killing is the biggest single blow to international drug trafficking in a decade. But it does not mean that fewer drugs will find their way onto the streets of Britain and America.
But if you think this end is dramatic, wait until you hear about Amado Carrillo Fuentes. Some would think his end would come in a blaze of gunfire, but you are in for a surprise.
Que sí existe afinidad familiar del cadáver adulto masculino a nombre de Antonio Montes Flores con la familia de Carrillo Fuentes.
July 4th, 1997, the secretive world of Mexico's drug trade lost its most powerful kingpin. Amado Carrillo Fuentes, the Lord of the Skies, died under bizarre and tragic circumstances. Not in a shootout, but on an operating table during plastic surgery. Amado was no ordinary trafficker. Born in Sinaloa, he rose from humble beginnings, mentored by his uncle Don Neto, learning the ropes of the drug trade at the border under Pablo Acosta. But what set him apart was his innovation, a vast fleet of jet planes that revolutionized cocaine transport. This earned him his notorious nickname, El Señor de los Cielos, Lord of the Skies. His empire stretched across continents, touching Asia, Europe, and the United States. Corruption was his shield. Cops, judges, generals, and politicians all on his payroll. Amado's control over Ciudad Juarez was so absolute that for years he ruled largely unchallenged, keeping the peace where others fought bloody turf wars. But by early 1997, the delicate balance cracked. The arrest of General Jess Hector Gutierrez Rebolo, Mexico's top anti-drug czar, exposed the depth of Amado's influence. He was accused of bribing the general himself. Suddenly, the heat was on. Amado was exposed, desperate and reportedly seeking to vanish. His solution was radical: plastic surgery to change his appearance and escape law enforcement's reach. But the operation went fatally wrong. Under heavy sedation, Amado died on the operating table. The government moved quickly to confirm the death. The Drug Enforcement Administration had fingerprints on file from decades earlier, and within days, forensic experts matched those prints to the corpse. Officials held a grim press conference to dispel rumors, yet conspiracy theories flourished. Some claimed Amado had faked his death, swapping places with another man. His body was transported under heavy guard, shrouded in secrecy and grief.
Sabemos que... Señora, ¿a dónde lo llevan, señora? Por lo menos díganos eso. Señora, ¿nos puede decir a dónde... Por acá. ¿Nos puede decir a dónde lo llevan, señora? ¿Puede hablar, por favor, señora?
Family members, especially his mother, were visibly distraught yet tightly controlled by security. The final destination remained a mystery to the public as the private jet took off into the night, carrying away the fallen drug lord. A fitting farewell, some would say, for the Lord of the Skies.